But before we get started, allow me to say a few words about the horrific mass shootings that occurred over this weekend in El Paso and Dayton. Like all Americans, Karen and I were outraged and sickened by these barbaric attacks. As I stand before you today, 31 people have died. 53 were injured. And it breaks our hearts to see so many innocent lives cut short by unspeakable violence. What happened this weekend were acts of pure evil. And we express our deepest condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. And we join every American praying for the injured and their families in their hour of need. The Bible says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. And that will be our prayer for the people of Dayton and El Paso. We also commend the men and women of law enforcement in both states, whose quick action and courageous service undoubtedly saved lives. They earned the admiration and gratitude of the American people. As President Trump said in his address to the nation yesterday, hate has no place in America. And the sinister ideologies of racism, bigotry, and white supremacy must be defeated. In the wake of previous violence, our administration worked on a bipartisan basis with the Congress to strengthen background checks and improve school safety. And in the wake of this weekend's mass shootings, the President has brought the full resources of the federal government to assist law enforcement in investigating and prosecuting those responsible for these heinous acts. Justice will be swift and certain. The President has also directed the FBI to use all legal means available to disrupt hate crimes and to prevent domestic terrorism before it occurs. We directed the Department of Justice to work with local, state, federal agencies, as well as social media companies, to develop new tools to identify those seeking to do harm before they strike. And the President called for all of us to work together to end the glorification of violence in our society and to reform our mental health laws. We'll work to identify and treat, and where necessary, involuntarily confine all those deemed a risk to themselves or the public safety. And as we speak, our administration is working with members of Congress to ensure that all those who pose a risk to public safety are denied access to firearms. And finally, because justice delayed is justice denied, we're developing legislation to ensure that those who commit mass murders face the death penalty swiftly. In years, not decades. And tomorrow, the President and the First Lady will travel to Dayton and El Paso to express the sympathies and support of the American people for all those impacted by these hideous attacks. As the President also said, now is the time to set destructive partisanship aside and find the courage to answer hatred with unity, devotion, and love. Now is the time to overcome evil with good. You know, it's always been true throughout the long history of this country that in times of trial, the American people turn to faith and prayer. The Bible tells us that if His people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray, that he'll hear from heaven and he'll heal our land. And in this dark hour for the people of El Paso and Dayton, we do well to pray. To pray for healing. To pray for the families of those that were lost and injured. To pray for these communities and for our nation as a whole.